Will Senator Hager yield to Senator Dewell?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Hager. Senator West, there are different types of privileges that hospitals can grant. There's
That's what I thought.
Yeah, there's full attending privileges. This would be a physician who is actively practicing at a given hospital, would do admissions, take care of a hospitalized patient during that care, may use consultants if need be. There's also, they have courtesy privileges. These are for physicians who perhaps will not admit very often to the hospital, perhaps for procedures, perhaps for extenuating circumstances. It just depends. And a hospital is capable really of granting any particular privileges to a physician given the circumstances. And any hospital, if a doctor performing abortion went to a particular hospital and asked for privileges just for admission for complications, most hospitals could do that.
So let me ask you this, looking at Section 2 of the bill, it talks about active admitting privileges. Is that ambiguous?
Well,
what does that mean?
Well, the hospital will define the type of privileges that that doctor has. I mean, active, what does active mean? Does that mean admitting a patient every day, every year? When you grant privileges to a physician, the hospital credentialing committee and ultimately their governing body will review the physician's credentials and decide if they have the qualifications by training and/or experience to be able to practice at that hospital. This is actually one of the ways this bill protects women's health, because by requiring a physician to have hospital privileges, it will ensure, let me finish, it will ensure a minimum basic training education requirement of any physician performing abortions.
Okay, and I apologize for interrupting you, but again, it just says active privileges. You don't believe that that's ambiguous? In other words, the reality is whatever hospital is considering, well, let me back up. You agree that there's going to have to be rulemaking as it relates, and I shouldn't be asking you this, I should be asking Senator Hager this, but there will be rulemaking as it relates to this legislation. And as it relates to the issue of active privileges in the hospital, isn't that pretty ambiguous given the fact of which you just said that different hospitals could interpret it different ways in terms of how their privileges and what level of privilege is necessary?
Well, I think they'll give privileges to the physician. I mean, I let hospitalists take care of my patients in the hospital now a lot because I'm absent a lot, but my partners do the same, and they're there all the time. I still have active admitted privileges. We have courtesy privileges. Again, as I mentioned, there's different designations, but what is active? I'm still very active in our hospital in terms of going to meetings and having the ability to admit in certain circumstances. Nursery, I still take care of newborns. I don't deliver babies anymore. So, I don't think using the term active here is going to create any problems. You'll either have privileges or you don't. And the other part of this bill, the ambulatory surgical clinic part, actually requires a transfer agreement between the ambulatory surgical clinic and a given hospital.
So if someone you said there was different levels of privileges, one being a courtesy privilege, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And a courtesy privilege can be is synonymous with active?
I think it's active. It's a practicing physician. I don't have any requirements from my hospital as to how much I admit. Sometimes when a physician is really not going to be admitting very often, they just get what's called courtesy privileges. Different hospitals have different rules, Senator West, and it may have to do with how many meetings you have to attend and various other requirements. But any hospital can grant specific privileges to any qualified physician to fit the particular circumstances.
Okay, let me ask this question, Senator Dr. Dewell. As it relates to requiring in statute the doctors performing these types of procedures, isn't this the first in the history of the state of Texas? When you're singling out one type of procedure?
I actually reviewed this with the members of the Texas Medical Board
and I was talking to the general counsel. Okay, go ahead.
Sir?
And I visited with the general counsel.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, and I've talked with some other people, you know, have more expertise than I do, but there are requirements not particularly stated in the Medical Practice Act. They use the term standard of care. And it is the standard of care, in my opinion, and others, that physicians are responsible for taking care of their patients after they've done anything, whether it's prescribed medication or done a surgical procedure, however minor or major. And any complaint from a patient to the medical board is subject to that standard of care, and it doesn't have to be written in the Medical Practice Act as
Nor does
such.
it have to be written into the law. So my question is why are we writing it into the law? Why are we singling out this one procedure and saying that you must have privileges at a hospital within 30 miles?
Well,
I don't know of any other, and I agree with you on the standard of care, and I think that's something that all physicians have to comply with anyway. And so given that they have to comply with that anyway, what's the necessity of singling out this one procedure to indicate that you have to have privileges in a hospital?
Well, Senator West, I'm glad you asked that question, because that really brings us to the whole point of this bill. The reason that we are doing this is because the abortion industry has not held to standards of care. They take advantage of women who are victimized and do not wish to draw attention to themselves by filing complaints with the medical board. They don't play by the rules. They don't do their own follow-up care. They don't manage their own complications. They don't manage the use of RU-486 in a proper way. And we have to assure that the women of Texas who choose to have a legal abortion, and they are legal, we have never stated otherwise in any of this debate, that they are not victimized and taken advantage of. As you well know, a lot of the lower educated and lower income women have abortions at a higher rate. These are what I call unsophisticated patients. They're good people. They're in a tough situation, but it's up to the state. It's up to us to intervene anytime people are subject to victimization. We did that with the payday lending. We have done that with other areas of medicine and other areas in education. It is up to us to protect these people, and they're not being protected properly.
My friend.
And if the abortion industry would play by the rules
May I
and
say
provide
something?
proper medical care,
May I
sir,
say something?
we wouldn't have to do this bill.
All right, and that's great rhetoric, great political rhetoric.
At the present time, Senator Hager has the floor. I asked if he would yield to you, Dr. Duell, for some questions. Now's not the time for debate.
Well, I think
Well,
I probably answered the original question. Thank
Well,
you.
again, I don't think the question has been answered, if you don't mind me following up, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Okay, when you start talking about all of the issues concerning the abortion and the overriding state interests or legitimate state interests in singling out physicians that handle abortions for a legislative requirement of privilege, you agree with me that that's the only procedure that we're singling out.
No, sir, I don't agree with you, because
That
I have
requires,
lots
that requires a privilege in a hospital. Is there any others?
No, I would not agree with that.
Well, what are the others?
Any physician who takes care of patients just by the rule of standard of care is required to be able to take care of that patient. And if a complaint is filed with the medical board, they are going to be charged with abandonment.
I understand what you're talking about, standard of care. And even if we didn't have this proposed legislation, those physicians that currently perform abortions would have to abide by that standard of care, would they not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me go back to my question. Are there any other physicians in the state of Texas that are required by law, similar to the one in Section 2, to have admitting privileges before they can perform a procedure?
The surgeons or doctors who perform procedures at ambulatory surgical clinics are required to have either a transfer agreement or privileges.
Thank you very much on that. Now, you also indicated a few minutes ago that there's a proliferation of evidence that you have looked at that requires us to take this action, the legislature to take this action. Where is that source of information coming from?
I'm not sure I understand what you're...
Well, you're saying that the state has an overriding interest for purposes of requiring that these physicians have privileges at hospitals, and that overriding interest is based on evidence that you have discerned from different sources. And
Well,
I'm asking you what sources they are.
Well, it's in our Constitution that we protect the public. That's why we have the Health and Human Services. We do restaurant inspections, that we make sure physicians and lawyers and nurses and barbers and hairdressers and plumbers, everybody have a license so that the public is protected.
And believe me, I agree with your Constitution. I'm talking about specific evidence, not just constitutional. And obviously, is there some specific sources of information that you have come upon that gives you concern that we need to make certain that physicians that are performing abortions have privileges at hospitals?
Nothing other than what I've just stated, sir.
Okay, have you looked at the statistics? So you looked at the Constitution. All right, have you looked at statistics from the Department of Health?
Well, I look at a lot of information in the Department of Health.
Would you agree with me that the Department of Health is neutral in this process? And
Well,
probably has the most credible evidence of exactly what the landscape is of issues concerning abortion facilities and abortions, period, in the state.
Well, I think they certainly are neutral, or try to be. They all have their individual biases. But yeah, I would concede that they try to be neutral, and I know you're getting ready to give me some statistics here. So.
No, I'm not. I'm getting ready to just give you a conclusory statement as it relates to those individuals that perform abortions in the licensed abortion facilities.
Well,
this is what I'm going to tell you. Based on my conversation with them this morning, not early this morning, about 10 o'clock this morning, they've said that over the years, they have not had significant issues with complications concerning abortions in the state of Texas in licensed abortion facilities. And I asked them, how do you define complications? Death, serious issues, complications, or serious health issues with the abortions. And here's the other piece, Dr. Dewey. Every year, these licensed abortion facilities, the 36 that we're talking about, they have to go through a survey. Someone from the health department goes out and makes certain that they're in compliance with all of the regulations that were promulgated by a rulemaking process where all stakeholders got an opportunity to have input. And they're saying that as we talk about these individuals that have privileges, that there's no problem. So it looks like this is a solution looking for a problem. Tell me where I'm wrong about that.